Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Shaun Stevenson Books, and today you are not prepared for this portal fantasy book that comes straight from the 90s. I was not prepared. I had to stop reading the book halfway through so I could read parts out loud to see, is that actually in this book? Is that actually happening right now? And it was. This is the weirdest book I think I might have ever read, but I weirdly loved it. So, what book am I talking about? I am talking about none other than book number 1 in the Joona Trilogy, Journey to Joona by Kim V. Engelmann. Now, Journey to Joona. I have a history with this series because you see, I actually bought book number 3 a long time ago when I was actually still a kid. So I had this book number 3, The Crown of Joona, but I had never read it because I knew it was book number 3. And so I'd looked for book 1, I'd looked for book 1, I'd looked for book 1, and I never could find it anywhere. And so as an adult, I finally said, you know what? I am going to read that weird book series because I want to know what it is about. So finally, I got my hands on a used copy of Journey to Joona, the first book in the trilogy. And like I said, I was not prepared for this book and how weird it was. Now, I will say, this book is a very interesting blend of some other fantasy books. And you can see definitely where Kim Engelmann has some inspiration from. Because this book, if I were to describe it to someone and say what other books it is like, it is definitely Narnia-ish. So you've got that Chronicles of Narnia feel by C.S. Lewis for sure. It's a portal fantasy, you go into another world, all those sorts of things. There's also a lot of Christian allegory throughout this book. So, and I will admit, I couldn't quite figure it all out, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And then the other thing that this book really reminded me of was Madeleine L'Engle's A Wrinkle in Time. It had the same sort of just feel to it, the same kind of gravitas and the same sort of world-ending stakes that the Wrinkle in Time book also has. Also, I think you have here a situation where the lead character is a girl, just like in A Wrinkle in Time, and in this book, the girl's name is Margaret. In that book, Wrinkle in Time, the girl's name is Meg. So you do have definitely some parallels there. Wrinkle in Time has also been said to be an allegory of sorts for the Christian faith. I personally don't see that. As a person who is a pastor and a Christian, I've never really seen that allegory, but I do know Madeleine L'Engle was a person of faith and definitely has written about faith in her other books. So that is definitely there maybe in some ways, but not in the same way as like Narnia is a straight up one-for-one kind of allegory to the Christian faith. The Journey to Joona is somewhere in between. There's definitely some allegory going on, but there's more than that. There's a whole fantasy world created here. So, what is this book about? This book is about 3 kids who have to help a magic swan defeat the evil magic swan that's trying to take over the mysterious land of Joona, which is like a heaven for swans. Who I don't even know what to say. This book was so strange. But basically, you have this kid named Margaret, and she is in the school. She lives with her Uncle John, and her parents have, I believe her dad passed away, but her mom has vanished, and no one really knows what has happened to her mom, who is the sister to Uncle John. So Margaret is living with her Uncle John, going to school. So there's these 2 boys at school, Craig and Ryan, and they tease Margaret a lot. They really bug her, they bother her a lot, and she is really annoyed by them and cannot wait to get away from them sometimes, but she also kind of likes to stick it to them as well. So the 3 of them come across this giant magic swan named Laurel. And Laurel tells them that he needs their help because the dark swan Sebastian has taken over the tunnel leading to the land of Joona and completely blocked it. After learning magic from the reptiles that live in the tunnel. Now, Sebastian's backstory, I am not gonna spoil here because it was the wildest part of this book. I I read his backstory I think 3 times because I just was like, is that actually happening? Is that what's going on? So, Sebastian is this evil swan that has blocked the way to Joona using his magic. Laurel needs these 3 kids' help in order to defeat Sebastian's magic and get the suffering swans of Earth to Joona, where they can be healed and made whole and live under the rainbow that lives over Joona. So, Joona is this place where the swans live there, and if swans don't keep coming to Joona, the rainbow's light will slowly fade and go dark, and all of Joona will be cast into darkness, which is what Sebastian would love to see happen. So I guess you have shades of like My Little Pony in here. There's Wrinkle in Time, some Narnia. There's also little bits of slice of life that come up because these kids live in a rural town that's kind of like out in the country a little bit. So there are some moments with some farming and some nature scenes that are really beautifully written by Kim Engelmann. I really enjoyed the descriptions in this book. I will say this book, I did not speed through it. It's not super long. It's about 160 pages or so. I didn't speed through it actually. I kind of like took my time, like kind of reading it, sort of savoring it a little bit, because like I said, the descriptions are really well done. I think that that is one of Kim Engelmann's biggest strong points, as she creates such great settings and really can describe a scene in such a beautiful way. And even when the dark swan Sebastian shows up, those are some actually pretty terrifying scenes. I kind of thought, based on like how cozy this book seemed, that it wouldn't really go there, but this book gets real intense halfway through when the kids are finally in the tunnel trying to figure out how to stop Sebastian's magic. It is scary, and there are some really frightening depictions of just all kinds of scary stuff in that tunnel that I was thinking, oh no, 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 I don't want to picture that, but here we are. So I do have to give a warning about this book though. This book twice used some outdated language that is language that back in the 90s, people did not consider offensive, but it is offensive today. And so I will say that that is definitely something to keep in mind if you look for these older versions. I know that Kim Engelmann has re-released this series, I believe, in an ebook format, and I do not know if she updated that language. I would kind of assume so, but I'm not totally sure. So, like I said, there's a couple of moments where some outdated language is used. So if that's something that bothers you, definitely skip this. If it's something you can just kind of skip past like I did and just keep going, great. That's kind of what I did. I said, you know what? I'm going to just skip past that and keep going. So, Journey to Joona, it was a lot of fun. It has a really great ending. There are some sad moments in here too that I definitely thought were really also pretty intense for a middle grade kids book, but really well done, very beautifully written, like I said. And I think that if you are a person who enjoys reading like fairy tales and like kind of those cozy fantasy stories, but that have this like really intense edge to them at moments, this is the book for you. So definitely Wrinkle in Time, I think, is a very good comparison because Wrinkle in Time has that cozy feel, really well written descriptions, but then you do have some very genuinely scary moments in that book where the main characters are in a lot of danger. And the main characters are kind of wondering like, how are we going to get out of this, with some very creepy depictions of things that are happening. So that's a very similar comp, I would say, to this book. So, have you ever read Journey to Joona? I would love to know if anyone else has read these books and knows about them, because I feel like they've been this like kind of secret fantasy series I've always kind of wondered about over all these years, and now I finally read the first one, and I definitely want to read the second one. I want to know what happens next. It does not leave you on a cliffhanger, so you could read this book and be totally satisfied, but it was one of those books where I just wanted a little more from the fantasy world. I was thinking, oh, I want to know what else happens in this fantasy world. That would be really interesting. At the end of the day, it took me a little while to figure out what I wanted to rate Journey to Joona, and I think I've settled on what I want to rate it. I give Journey to Joona a 4 out of 5 stars. It was well written. I think, unfortunately, like I said, there's some outdated language that I wish had been updated, but otherwise, it was well written. It was a little slower paced than other fantasy books I usually read, but I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the breath of fresh air, so to speak. Also, I really loved Sebastian as the villain. I think this was one of my new favorite villains in a book. It just was so wild. This evil swan that's trying to take over the world. I mean, just so random, but very, very intriguing. So if you've ever read Journey to Joona, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think of these books. And if you've read the other 2 yet, I'm going to read the next one soon, I think, because I want to know what happens. So until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.